Hello once again everyone, and happy holidays. I wanted to do, because I got some time, a little bonus video talking about Handaxes. Now, let me preface this by, there aren't really written sources for a system of fighting with axes of this size or what have you. You will find period accounts. There are some other things you can borrow from that can have an influence or what have you. This is meant to be more of a, hey, I would like to start playing with Handaxes and I would like a little bit of guidance for what to expect. So here's my recommendation, because we here at RCH have been playing with these a lot, and helping out today is Dave. So, first things first, attributes of playing with Handaxe against another Handaxe. I will do a follow-up where I talk about fighting other weapons and why this is not that great of an idea. First thing is, your range will vary. I'm using the shortest axe we have. Dave's is a little bit longer than mine. Others will be a little bit longer than that, etc. But all you're looking for with your relatively thin striking surface is hitting from extension or working at relatively medium-ish range. So there's not really that same dynamism of full extension, partial extension, no extension. It's much more we're all the way out or I'm relatively tight to me. As far as mentality, I recommend you switch between Dusak and Dagger back and forth. Those are going to give you the best options as far as things to do, and also the easiest transference between. You don't want to treat this like a sword, but if you're going to treat it like a sword, then I recommend the universal one-handed trainer above all else. So, with that in mind, what are the kind of strikes we're looking for? So, my recommendation, as much as you can help it, do not put your right foot forward and have your axe up there. With no tip, there's nothing really to threaten Dave with, so it's not a great idea for me to put this out where it can get grabbed or my hand can get cut or things along those lines. I recommend stay left foot forward, keep this back as much as you can, not necessarily behind you or anything along those lines, just loaded next to you. Tip up about head level is a good place. You can kind of load it onto the shoulder if you want a little bit more torque behind it, but you don't need to get terribly complicated. Just here will be plenty fine. Your offhand, meanwhile, just keep it in front of you. Don't forget about it. You're going to need to use it a lot. Don't stick it out ahead of you. You'll lose it. Just keep it here. So essentially almost like a little clinch. Now for your strikes. You have all the main kind of basic ones, and you should just strike whatever is closest to you. So in this case, technically speaking, the closest thing to me is either Dave's left hand or his head. Either one of that is fine. I want to throw my strike out in such a way that I hit my target, and as part of my cut, I am returning. So I don't want to be way out here like I can then work and wind, because there is no working and winding. If I'm going to hit something, I want to immediately be returning back to another anchor point as soon as possible. This gives us the idea that if I strike from my right, I hit, and then as I'm hitting, I'm also bringing it back and locking it up in front of my left shoulder, where I just move my left hand in front. Those of you that may have done some sickle, I recommend this position does actually work out pretty well, but we'll get more to that in a second. If I'm instead striking from my left, it's the same idea. This time I'm going to go for his right hand. It's going to be out and back up to that right shoulder again as soon as possible. You do not want to end up low. Not that you can't use things from here, but they aren't very beneficial. If I'm trying to strike from down and Dave strikes from above, I'm going to always lose out on how this goes, because it leaves me with nothing more than my left hand. There is an exception to this, though. If, for whatever reason, I'm fighting out of my left, this little cheeky shot coming upward or across, that'd be a 4 or a 6 cut for those of you that have some backsword experience. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world. In particular, if his axe is kind of out, so a little less behind him, a little more there, getting that quick little knock can be useful. But again, these aren't really strikes in the same manner as sword. It's, am I using this to hit him, go through, anchor back? Am I using this to knock something out of the way, clack it, make an opening? The only things I really, really recommend you specialize is, again, cutting from right to left, left to right, being able to cut middle and up from your left side, being able to strike straight over the top genuinely. That one you only want to do if you have control of their hand first. And that's pretty much it. Beyond that, there's really nothing else to it. Cut whatever's close to you. Make sure you're always moving when you strike. That's really all you need. Now to get into a couple more specifics, what about defending myself? You have two tools. If Dave comes in at me, I can, go ahead, try to defend, but of course the most immediate issue is whoever strikes first gets to hook first. So if I defend with just one hand, even him just trying to pull his axe through can pull mine away from me. And as you get tired swinging this around, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So if you are going to defend with your axe, I recommend you use both hands with it. So what that would look like is Dave goes to throw a strike at me, here. Now if he pulls, it's not that he can't still pull me, it's that I can use it to do things. And that can work in literally any direction. Above, on my left side, on my right side. It's also not terribly hard to do from here, because all you have to do is fold it over into your hand, and you're ready to go. If he happened to be striking more through, he'll hit the haft, and it's not really that big of a concern. Make sure you're not reaching out into space if you do this. So if Dave goes to strike at me, I shouldn't be reaching out and trying to catch it, like you would with a dagger parry or things along those lines, because I'm parrying the weapon, not his hand. Instead, let it come more toward you, because if he's going to pull from extension, this gives me a lot more options to do a lot more things, at least in my experience. The next option you have is defending with your offhand entirely. That's where things get a little bit tricky. Dave's axe handle is a lot longer than mine, meaning there's a not small chance that when he strikes in at me, I may be purely catching that axe handle with my arm. That's fine. I mean, it sucks, don't get me wrong, but it does lead to options, or at least to possibilities, or what have you. You would like, however, if distance allows, if he's going to strike, I'd like to be trying to catch that hand as much as I can. Not always a guarantee, though. So really, I would only recommend parrying with exclusively your hand if you are already in closer distance. So if Dave and I are playing out here, it's just cut whatever's closest. If he cuts at me, I should avoid if I can. If he cuts at me, I should block if I can't, and then work in if there's a hook or no. But I shouldn't be trying to put my hand out in space. If we're at closer distance where we've already perhaps had some tie-ups, odds are my axe is currently occupied with something and he's gotten free to do a strike at me, that is where now this needs to become involved. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about what those tie-ups and locks might look like. You have two. Technically three, but really two. Interior and exterior. So Dave strikes from his right side, I strike from my right side. We end up here. Now, the biggest danger that you have whenever both axes are hooked together is both of us can pull. And if both of us pull at the same time, we end up in a place where neither of us can do anything. This is being too much in sword mode when we should transition over to dagger mode. So, what you want to do if you find yourself in this internal lock is as follows. Left hand, left leg, control his arm, but not just pushing, because my axe will go with him. You want to take a page out of the sickle handbook and grab and withdraw. So essentially I trade places. I got pressure with my right hand, pressure with my left hand to relax my right hand, so then I can deliver a simple strike, basically from the wrist and elbow at this distance. And that's really all your bind work, quote unquote, is going to be, is we have a hook, clear the hook, strike whatever is open. So here's that again. We both strike in, clear, hit. The head is the priority if you can, but certainly if Dave was lifting his arms or things along those lines, I can look for other targets as well. But I do recommend just that scalp shot is not hard to achieve, and it's also the safest thing to be hitting when you're sparring with these. So that's your internal. What about your external? That'd be, we both cut from our left, the action comes in from our left, here. Same idea. You can also over the top and get the exact same action. But if you're both left foot forward, that requires a bit more of advance. Your next option is your hand goes on the interior, push up, clear back, hit that way. This one creates more space. So if you are going to go here, I do recommend you try to get a little more wrist control if you can. That will make things significantly easier. But since we're now broad to broad, there's a decent chance his hand comes out in front, so you may need to look for other targets as you go. Bear in mind though, if I have control of Dave's axe and he's trying to grapple me, then I am free and clear to start being a little more, creative with my strikes, just kind of hit and get damage. But if any way, shape, or form, as he brings that hand forward, I lose control of his axe, doing a free strike right now is just going to get me also hit in return. My goal should be to try and create distance, or just keep my axe away, don't get thrown, wait for his attack to come down, so then I can re-control and seek my next opening. And this leads to a very interesting thing, where if both fencers are very aware of that switch between I don't want to grapple because things aren't in my favor, I don't want to strike because things aren't in my favor, more often than not, they'll break apart. Basically just sitting in medium guard and breaking apart from each other, which is a good thing, I think. Now, The other main hook and tie-up that you will see is off of my doubled up block. So Dave strikes at me wherever, I get my doubled up block, and then he immediately pulls the hook. Step with him, try to transfer it to a side, and just work from what you got best. In this scenario, my best bet is to go ahead and try and control his arm, see if I can get my axe free and see what I can find. However, alternatively, strike again, he pulls, I manage to transfer it off to a side I want, get control of that axe handle, get mine free. If you ever find yourself in a scenario where you're hooked and the hook is not going your way, this one I find, at least for me, most often comes up from the internal. So we both strike to my right, and I'm here, basically. It slid up and it got close to my axe head. This is where things get interesting. If it gets to this point, because there aren't really a whole lot of blades or anything to worry about, I do advocate you have the readiness to drop your axe entirely. Basically, from here, for me to get my axe back requires a lot of work. For me to get the push and rip we talked about before also requires a lot of work because of the compromised hand position I've ended up in. For me to let go of my axe, which Dave is still worried about, and get control of either him or his axe, does not require a lot of work. He's still in, I'm winning, I can use my weapon mode. Me making the switch to go into body mode, or taking his weapon away mode, has won me quite a few of those engagements. It's that switch that has made the choice matter. Along with this as well, is also, there's a lot more options for axe taking than it seems. So, same setup, we both cut, and I'm losing. I can go all the way body. I certainly have the opportunity to, but especially with Dave's axe immobilized and his hand, further back, this is not a bad time for me to look at getting better control of his whole weapon, and now I have an axe he doesn't. If an engagement ends that way, that's still in my favor. So overall, nothing too complicated so far. What about other further close play or like hooking and things like that? For the most part, when it gets body to body, everything you already know from Dagger will serve you just fine, with a couple exceptions. So let's get real close and struggle cuddles, okay? One thing that I do see happen somewhat commonly is people will pull back and they'll try to get the ribs. That's completely fine, that's a totally valid target if I have control of his axe. But when you do that, make sure that you are not also looking down at those ribs. Not only because of possibility of grapple, but because right now I've got Dave's arm just under my left. For him to lift it straight up, he has to go through my whole body. If I lean down like this, it's a lot easier for him to get that clear. You may get the rib shot, but now you're locked in with a corpse. I recommend if you're ever going to strike at the lower body, be it ribs, be it just underneath his arm, so that includes neck if his hands are up, or leg, don't lean down for it. Keep yourself upright, get your hit or your hook, and go from there. Likewise, as far as other things you may need to do up close, you can take that axe hook and transfer it to certain points, which can be nice, and I may talk about this more with the sword, but as an example, on the interior hook, if we both have things a little more equal, I like to try and push this over his shoulder. That does give me a lot of fun opportunities if I can support it with my hand. Am I going to be able to immediately throw Dave? No. But if I keep pulling, that axe may come out of his hand. If I keep pushing, Dave may go to the floor. More importantly though, Dave can't do anything to me right now other than scramble. And when he is working on scrambling and getting free is when I will see what I should probably do next. Either throw him, take the axe, whatever. Same thing on the other side, we both strike in from our left to the external hook. The place I like to put this is again over the head, same sort of scenario, or you can even just push it up against them. Anything that blinds them and gives you that opportunity to make them scramble, see what you can do next. So too long didn't read, what should you do as far as axe fighting goes, in my opinion? Keep your weapon back, strike whatever is closest to you, only in ways that reload you. Striking from your right, striking from your left, striking straight down, all fine. Striking horizontally and upward from your offside, so a backhanded strike, not bad. These two, not all that useful, honestly, unless you've already got control of the person. If you're going to end up in a hook, it's going to be axe, hand, axe. Anytime your hand comes out, it should be allowing your axe to get back to your load point, from which you can strike again. Internal hook, boom. External hook, boom. Bear in mind that creates more space. Pay attention to whether or not your axe is strong or weak. If you find that the hook is not going your way, let it go, take theirs, or let it go, take them. If you find that you're in a scenario where you are up close and you need to free your axe and you see a target, if you have their axe, go for it. If you don't, wait for the scramble, secure theirs, then go from there. And really, that's the long and short of any dagger fighting, or axe fighting, or sickle fighting, or whatever. If you get up close, if you have control of the weapon, attack as you know well. If you don't, if neither fencer is controlling it, you're better off getting yourself back to longer distance anyhow, or you're just going to both walk away stabbed and cut. If you're just going to parry, double up, always makes things safer. Otherwise though, that's just a little kind of introduction to fighting with these. It's been a lot of fun to play around with them. It's not something that I would really make too much of a crazy study about. All it is, like I said, is I know how dagger works, I know how dussack works. Congratulations, it's a hooky dagger. That's really all you need. That's the length of a dussack. Now, as far as fighting other weapons with this, as can happen at EHAW, or alternatively, maybe you're starting to look into certain periods that did have a prevalence of hand axes against swords or what have you, I'll do a follow-up video where I talk about some of the things I've observed and gone through. And especially from the swordsman's perspective, for those of you that are into the more Napoleonic stuff, there are some things you need to look out for and exploit when someone tries to run at you with a hand axe. Otherwise, thank you very much, Dave, and thank you all very much for watching. Happy holidays, Happy New Year. We'll go over some other techniques another time.